Democrat hold or curse on you. You can't let this happen. 40% is not acceptable. In my opinion, the Jewish people would have a lot to do with a loss if I'm at 40%.
I wasn't treated right. Bro, that does not sound anything like outreach to Jewish American voters. Trump is essentially scapegoating Jews in advance, worried to lose the election, and that's a dangerous anti-Semitic trope. And he's doing so at an event that is designed to fight anti-Semitism. But that's not it. Remember his infamous Muslim ban from his first term? At that same event, Trump promised this Jewish audience that he's going to bring that back.
We will seal our border and bring back the travel ban. Remember the famous travel ban? We didn't take people from certain areas of the world because I didn't want to have people ripping down and burning our shopping centers and killing people. But we're not taking them from infested countries.
Infested countries. Let's spend some time here. We have heard this dangerous rhetoric before, and it's not just reserved for Muslims, for Jews, or for Haitians. This is a man who recently referred to his political enemies as vermin and claimed that immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country. And his running mate is now accusing Haitian migrants of spreading disease in Ohio. Yes, he is really doing this. Take a look. This is what we have learned from the United States Holocaust Museum about this sort of rhetoric. It is often portrayed persecuted people by the regime as vermin, parasites, or diseased. Nazi ideology focused on the idea that Germany's racial purity was under attack from the blood of weaker peoples, and Nazi propaganda often depicted Jews, political opponents, and others as parasites that threaten the overall health of Germany. Now, I am not invoking Nazi Germany lightly, and I am not doing it at all for hyperbole. I'm doing it in part because it reminds me about a warning of Donald Trump going back to 2016. There was a young, up-and-coming conservative writer who warned that Trump might be America's next Hitler. He called him noxious and reprehensible, and he even cleverly noted that Trump is cultural heroin. He makes some feel better for a bit, but he cannot fix what ails them, and one day they'll realize it. Of course, that thoughtful young man was J.D. Vance, 8 years before becoming Donald Trump's vice presidential pick. And in some ways, J.D. Vance is even more cynical and more craven than Trump. See, he knows what Trump is all about. He knows how dangerous and, yes, how fascist Trump's ideas and his rhetoric are. He said so himself. But now he's Donald Trump's most aggressive peddler of that same cultural heroin that he warned everyone else about just 8 years ago. And at the tender age of 40, he's spreading it to newer generations and guaranteeing that it's going to be around for a very long time. Starting us off tonight, I have Rich Benjamin, author of the forthcoming book, Talk to Me, Lessons from a Family Forged by History, and one of my personal favorites, Ruth Ben-Ghiat, professor of history at NYU and author of Strongman Mussolini to the Present. Rich, thank you for being here and starting us off. What do you make of this turn in J.D. Vance, who started out as someone who was a never-Trumper Republican and now has seemed to sort of sip the white nationalist Kool-Aid and is spewing it out as far and wide as he can?
It's so cynical, Charles. It's a grab at power, and it's this realization that at the highest levels of the GOP establishment, this white nationalist ideology will get you somewhere. It'll gain you somewhere. And so he sees it bubbling up at their grassroots base, but he's also percolating it downward. And so it's absolutely frightening, as you said, because it harks to a past that many people, whether you have Polish blood, Russian blood, Jewish blood, Latin American blood, if you're the product or the son or grandson, granddaughter or daughter of someone who's fled a totalitarian regime, you can smell this noxiousness miles away.
Ruth, we have talked a lot about the notion of language and how powerful it can be. And you have the historical context to explain for our audiences how significant it is when there are certain dog whistles that are given to an audience. Can you just sort of revisit that for people who may be a little bit late to the party to really understand why these aren't just words, but these are very, very weighted, very, very loaded phrases that have much larger implications for where we could be heading?
Yeah, and we can start back with Hitler, who called Jews black parasites of the nation from the early 1920s on. And it's important that by the time Hitler came to power in 1933, Germans had been hearing these terms for over a decade. And one thing about propaganda is you hear extreme things over and over again, then they don't seem so extreme anymore, and they become familiar. Now, Americans have been hearing Trump malign, immigrants for almost a decade now. And so what Trump's method is to, slowly introduce more and more extreme ideas. So first we had immigrants, and we have this now, as, the internal enemy of the nation, all the dehumanizing rhetoric, the vermin, the nests of them, we have to root them out. And now he and Vance are introducing this idea of remigration, which is really scary because this is an idea that's very popular with the most extreme far-right people in Europe. And it holds that you should be deported and sent back to your country of origin, regardless of your citizenship status. Because if you really want a racial state, a white ethno-state, then whether you're legal or illegal doesn't matter. And that's what Vance is saying. He doesn't care if Haitians are here legally or not because they're the wrong race, and thus they're going to be targeted for deportation. So this has been a journey of language and a journey of concepts that these people have very knowingly taken Americans on. It's really disturbing.
Ruth, I'm so glad you touched on that remigration piece, because I think for a lot of people, they need to understand the connection with things like replacement theory and how these things sort of coalesce in white nationalist rhetoric to vilify in other people who are not considered to be worthy of being within the American civic process, if any American process at all. And so making those connections is really important. Rich, we've got 44 days until the election. And this is typically a time where you see folks begin to, as much as they can, pivot their rhetoric toward the middle of the country and try to grab as many independent and centrist voters as possible. But on the right, with respect to Donald Trump, we are definitely not seeing that. We are seeing an attempt to sort of stretch and double down to what seems like the farthest reaches of the right to mobilize that base. What, if you have any sort of idea, is the strategy here as he attempts to do that and forego what would seem to be voters in the middle that might have been persuadable had he not chosen to jump off the deep end with some of this?
It's baffling, right? 44 days closer to the election. But I think the answer to your question is the strategy is these folks know they're a declining majority. They understand that if they take this autocratic route, they can therefore have the policies that have broad support across the country. I can give you 3 examples: reproductive rights, raising the federal minimum wage, universal pre-K. I could go on and on. But when the population supports that and you understand that you're against these things, you have to pivot to your hard right. Autocracy is the way. And I love what Ruth was saying about language. Lies helps accomplish this. Lies, lies, lies. Diseducation, misinformation, and we're seeing it all that. So they're doubling down on a kind of minority rule strategy.
You know, Ruth, on the lead-in, we talked a lot about Donald Trump's recent comments to Jewish Americans, specifically at an event that was intended to be fighting against anti-Semitism. Do you think that sort of challenge, if you will, to Jewish American voters is going to resonate at all? There'll be backlash? Are we seeing, or can we expect to see Donald Trump being labeled as anti-Semitic, or is that going too far based off of what he said to that audience at that event?
Well, it's hard not to see him as anti-Semitic, given that he, allied with neo-Nazis from the very beginning, and he's issued these kind of veiled or not so veiled threats to Jews before, saying that they were disloyal. And, I would hope there would be backlash, but the reality is, along with evangelical Christians, Orthodox Jews have been one of Trump's most staunch, groups, constituencies supporting him no matter what he says and does. And this is, to my mind, knowing history, also extremely misguided, to say the least. So it's very scary when that clip you showed, this a combination of grievance, the autocrat's grievance. I was treated badly, and it's your fault. And what's not said but is understood is you're going to pay.
Rich, I've got very little time, but I need you to make something super plain for me and the audience. If you're someone who is not of Haitian descent and you're listening to Donald Trump's remarks in Springfield or about Springfield and J.D. Vance and everything that's going on there, why do you care? How do you make that case?
You care because it is the value that's under attack, not just the actual people. The actual people are a scapegoat to attack the value, and that value is your problem.
Church on Sunday, there it is. Rich Benjamin and Ruth Ben-Ghiat, thank you both for getting us started on this Sunday evening. And coming up next, Haitians are facing increased threats because of Donald Trump's lies. And now the danger extends to those who cover their stories. We'll explain.
No importa el ritual, asegúrate de estar listo para el partido con T-Mobile.
¿Listo? ¡Listo!
Obtén 4 líneas ilimitadas con llamadas internacionales incluidas por solo $30 por línea. Y llévate 4 Samsung Galaxy S24s con Galaxy AI por cuenta nuestra.
The Oracle Jet sets the new standard in automation, performance and speed. Powered by the ThermoJet heating system, it's ready in seconds. Select from cafe favorites, including refreshing new cold coffees. Auto grind, dose and tamp for a well-balanced extraction. And automatically texture milk for silky smooth microfoam. It's the benchmark redefined from Breville.
I've got really high expectations.
We have to be at the top of our game.
It's like the best job in the world.
Welcome to the circus.
If you two can't work together, I have to let go of both.
What?
I don't like that. Oh, my.
Oh. I don't want mistakes.
This is too much for me.
You're ready.
You're not having a good time. I'm not doing my job.
Add all the Below Decks to My Stuff on Peacock. And don't miss Below Deck Sailing Yacht October 7th on Bravo.
A good deal shouldn't make you choose. That's why Subway just dropped the price on all their subs. 20% off any sub, any size.
Wait, Subway did what? 20% off any sub, any size?
Yep. For a limited time, get 20% off any footlong or 20% off any 6-inch when you order in the app. Get 20% off your favorite sub at Subway while the deal is still on. Enjoy an MVP rewards for even more great deals.
Meet Avocado's best-selling green mattress. Made with certified organic cotton, wool, and latex. Plus pocketed coils to support your body's natural curves for cool and restorative sleep. Featuring a 1-year in-home sleep trial. Complete your bedroom oasis with organic pillows and bedding. Shop today with Avocado Green, proud supporter of 1% for the planet.
It was very important for me to have a therapist who could understand relationships, traumas, the LGBTQ community, and someone who was also a person of color.
I tend to deal with things in life with a sense of humor. My therapist on BetterHelp and we share this trait, and so we connect on a deeper level, and I'm more comfortable sharing things with him.
I am just so much more in tune with myself. Being able to talk to my therapist